Welcome back to the Deep Dive. We often talk about crises in football, a bad run of results, a manager under pressure. But today, we are diving into something, well, something far more volatile.
It's a different level, isn't it?
Absolutely. We've spent weeks sifting through a mountain of sources, articles, punditry, even fan forums, and they all point to an Anfield crisis we haven't seen in a generation. This isn't just about results.
No, this is a club legend, Mohamed Salah, openly, very publicly, clashing with the institution he helped to define. Some of our sources are calling it an exceptionally sad, depressing turn in the club's recent history.
Exactly. So our mission today is to analyze what happens when all these massive forces collide. You've got a player's ego, the club's loyalty structures, a new tactical system, and a legendary legacy, all just crashing into each other.
It's a perfect storm, and we have to get to the bottom of it.
We're going to unpack every single layer of this for you. We've got reports that Salah feels he's been thrown under the bus,
Right.
that his relationship with the manager, Arne Slot, is now, and I'm quoting here, genuinely broken.
And he's hinting, isn't he? He's strongly hinting that he's being forced out, possibly even in this upcoming January window.
It's a profound internal fracture. So we have to look beyond the headlines. Is Salah, as his critics are saying, destroying his own reputation with what's being called a diva tantrum?
Or, and this is the key question, is his outburst just the symptom? Is he simply revealing a rotten core, a management and recruitment system that's failing the club in a crucial transition?
Let's start right where it all began, the unavoidable truth that really paved the way for this entire confrontation. The measurable, undeniable dip in his world-class performance.
It all comes back to that.
Okay, let's get right into the flashpoint. The moment Salah's individual performance gave Arne Slot the perfect opening to take some pretty drastic action.
The narrative around his decline has become brutal. Absolutely brutal. I mean, the criticism directed at his recent form is unlike anything he's faced since he joined Liverpool.
He's always been shielded by the goals, hasn't he?
Always. But now, the sources we've seen suggest his recent displays have been atrocious. That's the word being used. Particularly his lack of intensity off the ball.
You've seen comments from fans saying it's like playing with 10 players.
Exactly. Because of those defensive deficiencies, the consensus is that he's a shadow of himself. And that feeling has been around since those big games at the end of last season.
And what's really unsettling for his supporters is how the cold, hard numbers back all of this up. We pulled one stat in particular that is just staggering.
It really illustrates the drop-off, doesn't it?
It does. Since that 3-1 win over Southampton back in April, his goal production has almost completely evaporated.
It is stark. In the period after that game, Salah has scored only 7 goals.
7.
And you have to remember that figure includes the goal from the Community Shield.
Which is basically a glorified friendly, let's be honest.
It is. And this is across 32 games, where he's played a massive 2,815 minutes. When you look at his minutes per goal ratio, his overall contribution, it's just a huge concern for a player whose main job is to score.
And to give that some real weight, you have to compare it to other legends. We found a fascinating comparison to Wayne Rooney. Even during Rooney's most criticized season at Manchester United, his so-called worst season.
He was playing much deeper by then, wasn't he? Almost as a midfielder.
Exactly. He was transitioning into a deeper role, a playmaker, and yet, numerically, his output, even with that positional change, was arguably better than what Salah, a dedicated forward, is producing right now.
And that's the key. It's about expectation. Rooney's role changed. Salah is still expected to be the main goal threat, which makes that 7-goal total so damning.
If you just rewind to the previous season, he was unbelievable. He basically carried the team to the title.
Oh, the numbers were off the charts. 47 goal contributions, 29 goals, 18 assists in just 38 league games.
At one point, he was contributing something like 68% of the team's total goals.
It settled around 55% by the end, but the reliance on him was monumental. And the contrast between that and what we're seeing now, well, it gives Arne Slot a massive statistics-based justification for what he did next.
Which was the managerial intervention, the core trigger for this entire public meltdown. Slot's decision was unprecedented, benching Salah for 3 consecutive starts.
Correct. And the sequence of events, you can tell it was designed to send a very clear message.
First, he was on the bench against West Ham. Not just on the bench, but an unused substitute.
For a player of Salah's stature, that is a highly provocative move.
Then he came on for 45 minutes against Sunderland, and then for the 3rd game in a row, he was out of the starting lineup again.
And of course, from Slot's perspective, the results immediately proved him right.
Instantly. The 3 games right before he dropped Salah when Salah started, it was a disaster. 0 wins, 0 draws, 3 losses.
And a -9 goal difference. Awful.
Then you compare that to the 3 games immediately after the benching.
The swing is incredible. 1 win, 2 draws, 0 losses, and a +2 goal difference.
That's a swing of almost 4 goals per game. On paper, it looks like a stroke of managerial genius.
It does, but you have to immediately question it, don't you? How much of that is Slot's tactical brilliance and how much is just, well, the fixture list?
That's the crucial counterargument. The 3 terrible games with Salah were against really tough opponents. PSV, Man City, and a Forest team that was in great form.
Whereas the 3 games without him were against, let's be fair, less threatening sides. Sunderland, Leeds, West Ham.
Precisely. So critics will say the results got better because the opposition got weaker. But even if you factor that in, it's clear Slot was trying to fix a systemic problem.
Which brings us to the tactical failure. The sources are very, very clear on this. Salah is struggling because Slot's new system demands a much higher work rate.
Specifically, tracking back and pressing, which as he's gotten older, he's done less and less of.
And this is where the real tension lies. One of our key sources claimed that Salah believed he had a tacit agreement, maybe from the Klopp era.
An understanding.
Yes, that he didn't need to do all that rigorous defensive work as long as his offensive numbers, his goals and assists stayed elite.
But the problem is Arne Slot doesn't see it that way.
Not at all, especially now that Salah, and this is a quote from Paul Joyce, has stopped scoring.
And when the goals dry up, that lack of defensive work is suddenly exposed, isn't it? It becomes a huge weakness.
It's deadly in modern football. If Salah, playing high on the right, doesn't track back to cover his right back, you're creating what one source called a massive liability.
Opponents are actively targeting that space. We've seen quotes from players like Cucurella at Chelsea saying their game plan is to exploit that channel behind him.
So Slot was trying to fix a systemic flaw that Salah's brilliance used to mask. By benching him, he was essentially saying the system is more important than your individual credit.
And that is what sparked the explosion.
So the benching was one thing, an internal matter. But Salah's decision to go public with it, that's what truly detonated this bomb.
Yes, this is where we move into the eruption, where a team selection issue becomes a full-blown public crisis that challenges the manager's authority.
The quotes he gave are just devastating. They were clearly calculated to cause maximum disruption.
Let's go through them. He started by just confirming the personal breakdown, didn't he? He admitted he no longer has a relationship with Arne Slot.
That one sentence, it tells you everything you need to know about the lack of communication and trust there.
But he didn't stop. He then publicly stated he feels like someone does not want me at Anfield.
And then went even further, strongly hinting at being forced out in the January window.
It's a fascinating psychological game he's playing. By framing himself as the victim, he's trying to deflect from his own bad form, isn't he?
Absolutely. He's shifting the blame onto the manager, onto the club. And he really hammered that home by complaining about the lack of clarity. He said, I asked, but I didn't see an explanation. I knew I wasn't going to play.
Which, whether it's true or not, paints a picture of a manager who can't or won't communicate properly.
But the comment that did him the most damage, I think, was the one about his place in the team.
Oh, that was a huge misstep. He suggested he'd earned his place and shouldn't have to fight for it.
And that was immediately seized upon by fans and pundits as very unfortunate. It just screams of entitlement. It implies that what he did in the past should matter more than what he's doing right now.
Critics saw that as proof. Undeniable proof that he's now playing for himself, not for the badge.
It was a massive PR mistake. Paul Joyce, in his analysis, he didn't pull any punches, did he? He asked what he hopes to achieve from a remarkable act of betrayal.
To undermine your manager in public while the team is struggling. For many, that's the ultimate professional sin.
And our sources confirm the damage is probably irreversible. Sami Mokbel's reporting said the relationship with Slot is genuinely broken, and Salah simply doesn't see a future at Liverpool with Slot as his manager.
And once a player says that publicly, you're forcing the club's hand. It becomes an ultimatum.
It does, and this is what's fueled the criticism of Slot's man management. Critics are saying his approach is dreadful. They call him cold, that he lacks the people skills you need for a dressing room of elite players.
The public exile of a club legend has been called a disgrace. It makes Slot look rigid, authoritarian, not a skilled communicator.
But we have to be fair here. This isn't the first time Salah's ego has caused problems, is it?
No, it's a pattern of behavior. We all remember the incident with Klopp.
The "if I talk, there will be fire" comment after he was substituted, that showed a deep dissatisfaction even then.
And his strained relationship with Sadio Mane was an open secret for years, wasn't it? That was all about ego, about who was the main man.
The club tolerated it, even bent the rules for him because his output was world-class. But that well of tolerance runs dry pretty quickly when the performance drops off a cliff.
Some of his defenders did try to play the language barrier card at first.
Right, suggesting that maybe it just sounded worse in English, which isn't his first language.
The argument doesn't really hold up, does it?
Not really. The counter-argument is that he has a history of using the media very strategically when it suits him, most famously during those long, drawn-out contract negotiations.
His meaning was crystal clear.
It was. The problem wasn't his vocabulary. The problem was his conscious decision to air the club's dirty laundry in public to put maximum pressure on his manager.
So when a conflict like this goes public, it forces everyone to pick a side, doesn't it? Fans, pundits, former players.
It immediately sparks this huge debate about loyalty, ego, legacy.
Let's start with the main accusation against Salah, which has been dubbed the Ronaldo playbook argument.
Yes. Pulling a Ronaldo became the immediate shorthand for it. It's the accusation that he's behaving selfishly, trying to dictate terms, maybe force an exit, or even get the manager sacked through public pressure.
And it all comes down to that one fundamental belief in football. No player is bigger than the club.
Especially not when that player is the highest earner, taking home a reported £400,000 a week. For that kind of money, you expect absolute professionalism.
Which is, I shouldn't have to fight for my place comment, just completely violates.
And you can feel the sense of betrayal from the fans. Many supporters are just disgusted, calling it a diva tantrum.
They're comparing him to other club legends, and it's not a favorable comparison. They point to people like Andy Robertson or Roberto Firmino.
Exactly. Players who were rotated or saw their careers winding down, but they just kept their heads down and worked hard. They showed respect for the team, for the manager. No public drama.
And this behavior, of course, it threatens his legacy. His status as a legend is secure because of the goals and trophies, but many agree he is severely tainting it now.
It's a mirror image of how Ronaldo's second spell at Manchester United ended. So messy, so bitter. A superstar whose form was declining, who felt he was exempt from the team's rules. It's a sad way for it to go.
But there is a strong counterargument, the scapegoat argument. Many loyal fans believe Salah is actually the victim here.
This is the idea that he's being sacrificed by Slot and the club hierarchy by Edwards and Hughes to mask much deeper systemic problems.
The logic is, if your transfers are bad and your tactics aren't working, the easiest political move is to blame your biggest star.
And the question they ask is a fair one. If Salah is being dropped for poor form, why are other players who are performing just as badly, if not worse, still starting every single week?
They point to specific players, too. They mention Ibrahima Konate, who some accuse of being responsible for at least one goal every game due to defensive errors.
But he keeps his place. And then there's the accusation of managerial favoritism.
With Cody Gakpo, labeled by some as Slot's golden child.
Right. Critics say he offers very little beyond sloppy footwork and inconsistency. But he's protected. It creates this perception that Salah is being unfairly targeted, maybe because he isn't one of Slot's guys.
And this victim narrative has spawned a pretty powerful transfer conspiracy theory.
The theory that the club is actively trying to freeze him out, that they regret giving him that massive contract and now they want to engineer a sale.
For purely financial reasons. Humiliate him, bench him, and then cash in on a lucrative January sale to Saudi Arabia.
And then use that 9-figure sum to reduce the net spend and fund the signings they actually need. It paints a picture of a club being run with cold commercial logic rather than loyalty.
This all spilled over into the punditry wars, which really kicked off when Wayne Rooney stepped in.
Rooney's comment that Salah was destroying his legacy was the spark that lit the fire.
On the face of it, it makes sense. But it was immediately met with a huge backlash accusing Rooney of hypocrisy.
Of course. Critics instantly brought up Rooney's own history, threatening to leave Manchester United for Man City in 2010 and then Chelsea in 2013.
Both times to secure a massive new contract. They argued he had no moral high ground to lecture anyone on loyalty.
But there is a counter-argument, a more nuanced one.
Which is that while Rooney did threaten to leave, He never publicly went after his managers. He never blasted Sir Alex Ferguson or David Moyes in the media the way Salah has gone after Slot.
And that's a critical distinction. Also, when Rooney's own performance declined with age, he largely accepted being dropped or rotated. The real toxicity here isn't the form dip, it's the public airing of dirty laundry.
And finally, you have the media bias angle, which is a common argument from some Liverpool fans.
The idea that Salah is a permanent scapegoat for the media.
Especially for the powerful group of ex-Manchester United pundits Rooney, Neville, Keane, Scholes.
They argue that these pundits disproportionately target Liverpool's star players to generate clicks and headlines, that the media latches onto the Salah drama because it guarantees viewers while ignoring the deeper systemic issues at the club.
So this deep dive has to pivot now, away from the personal clash, because whoever leaves, Slot or Salah, this whole scenario shines a really harsh light on a severe systemic crisis at Liverpool.
It's about the manager, the recruitment policy, and the entire culture of the club.
Let's start with the criticism of Arne Slot's management, beyond just his handling of Salah. The sources consistently describe him as cold.
Lacking in man management skills and showing what's being called a Dutch stubbornness.
And that stubbornness translates into an unwillingness to adapt his tactics, right? It leads to performances that are described as predictable, toothless, and vulnerable.
Exactly. It means he's sticking rigidly to a system, a 4-3-3 or a high defensive line, even when the players or the opponent demand a change. The attacks become easy to read, and the defense is constantly exposed on the counter.
And his reputation is becoming, well, pretty tenuous. Yes, he won the Premier League last season.
But critics are now calling that a lucky coincidence. They're saying he just inherited Klopp's team, Klopp's fitness, Klopp's chemistry.
And that he was never really tested until this season when he had to integrate his own players and implement his own vision.
And now that he's facing real adversity, the cracks are showing. The slot-out brigade is growing louder every week.
The owners have given him their full backing publicly, but sources say that patience is not limitless, and that pressure is made worse by what many see as a huge transfer strategy blunder.
This is on the directors of football, Edwards and Hughes. The core belief is that the recruitment last summer was just staggering hubris.
They were spending big, chasing these huge names like Isak or Wirtz.
Yet they completely failed to address the most obvious gaps in the squad.
Well,
a reliable starting center back, a proper physical defensive midfielder, basic fundamental needs.
And that created a player profile mismatch. The old Liverpool identity was built on work rate, on selfless players like Mane and Firmino.
And they've replaced that workhorse core with high-priced individual talents who, critics say, prioritize their own flair over defensive duties. The new signings just don't have that same intensity.
So the defensive fragility was almost inevitable, regardless of what Salah did.
Then you have what some sources call the Quansah-esque man management of the squad depth.
Right. They sold valuable squad players like Jarell Quansah, who was moved on to get more game time. They let Kelleher and Simicas go.
And on the recruitment side, they failed to sign their main defensive targets like Mark Wehi, so they were left desperately shorthanded in key areas.
It's a series of missteps that just made the defensive problems even worse. The problem wasn't just Salah. The entire structure behind him was crumbling.
And all of this has just culminated in a total loss of team chemistry and culture. One of the key factors here, which is often overlooked, is the departure of the assistant manager, John Heitinga.
This is so important. Senior players were reportedly unhappy when Heitinga left for Ajax because his relationship with the squad was much stronger and warmer than Slot's.
He was the buffer, the psychological link between the cold, tactical head coach and the dressing room.
He was the one for man management, the arm around the shoulder that Slot refused to be. And as a former top-class defender, he was vital for organizing the defense.
Ryan Gravenberch publicly credited Heitinga for his improvement last season, so his departure, combined with the turnover of other backroom staff and key players leaving, it was a recipe for a disaster.
The whole emotional infrastructure of the team was just stripped away.
And it feels like the club is losing its soul. That famous Liverpool way of unity and shared struggle just seems broken.
The comparison being made is chilling. It's being compared to the immediate post-Fergie Manchester United.
A speed run of United's collapse, a legendary, culturally defining manager leaves, and the whole institution, without a strong leader and with poor recruitment, just crumbles under the weight of expectation.
And Salah's outburst is just inadvertently revealing how deep that institutional failure goes.
So this crisis, this genuinely broken relationship, it all points towards the January transfer window, doesn't it?
It does. And we have to be realistic here and talk about the financial side of Mohamed Salah's contract, because that really dictates what happens next.
It's the first unavoidable reality. His salary, around £400,000 a week, plus his age and his form, he's basically unaffordable for any other top European club.
Maybe PSG or Real Madrid could, but even they would think twice at that price tag.
Which automatically narrows the field down to one destination, the Saudi Pro League.
And the appeal for them is huge. It's not just about football. Salah is arguably the biggest Muslim player in the world.
Culturally, he's on a level just behind Messi and Ronaldo. For the SPL's ambitions, signing him would be a massive, massive coup.
And sources say the Saudis are ready to be extremely aggressive. They'll pay a transfer fee within reason, which probably still means well over $100 million.
And they are prepared to offer him whatever wages he asks for. The desire to get a star of that magnitude means the price is effectively no object.
So a January exit is a very real possibility. Reports suggest the SPL is in a position to fund a move this winter.
And from a cold corporate perspective at Liverpool, it's the easiest way out.
It is. Selling him generates a huge single payment. It saves them a fortune in wages over the rest of his contract.
And that money could be immediately reinvested into the players they desperately need. A new center back, a defensive midfielder. It solves the problem player and fixes the systemic weaknesses in one go.
But this entire ugly mess has just exposed a massive leadership vacuum, hasn't it? Poor leadership from the player and poor leadership from the manager.
And the dressing room is clearly fractured. We have evidence that Salah's stance is not universally supported by his teammates.
Virgil van Dijk, the captain, came out and said that no one has unlimited credit.
Which is a very clear, if subtle, message. It's a rejection of Salah's entitled stance and a call for collective accountability.
And when you compare Salah's behavior to other professionals, like Andy Robertson, who've been dropped while in good form,
but have just kept their heads down and worked their way back in without the media campaign, it makes Salah look incredibly petulant.
So this leaves the club hierarchy with a brutal choice. It's devolved into Slot or Salah.
They have to decide who is more damaging to the long-term health of the club, or, more cynically, who is more expendable.
And given Slot has a long-term contract and the owners have publicly backed him,
the consensus is that Salah will be the one forced out. He's the one causing the public dissent, and he's the one who is financially replaceable. For now, the manager holds the power.
But regardless of who goes, this crisis has made the scale of the long-term rebuild terrifyingly clear.
This is way more than just replacing one player. To get back to being properly competitive, they need a major, expensive overhaul.
Minimally, 2 new starting center backs, a more defensively robust right back, a specialist defensive midfielder.
And of course, a world-class replacement for Salah's goals. It's a huge shopping list.
The prognosis right now feels like a lose-lose situation. This could still cost Slot his job if results don't improve.
And it's definitely costing Salah his dignity and tainting his legacy in the eyes of many fans. The club has to move past these clashing egos, the players and the managers, and restore the focus on the team.
Because if they don't, they risk a prolonged crisis, just like the decade of decline Manchester United went through after Ferguson left. The culture has to be rescued, or the fall from grace could be catastrophic. #outro. So this exhaustive deep dive into the chaos at Liverpool ultimately shows you how unstable elite football can be during a transition. Mohamed Salah's historic brilliance bought him years of credit, but when his performance finally dipped, the tactical system failed him, and the visible lack of man management from Arne Slot just created a truly toxic, explosive environment.
And the central question is still there, isn't it? Is Mohamed Salah actively destroying his own legacy through sheer petulance and ego? Or is he just the lightning rod, the one who is revealing the deep institutional incompetence of a club that completely failed to manage a clean transition away from a legendary manager?
And here is the final provocative thought for you to mull over. You might remember Salah himself once said that the club had a philosophy of testing players over 30 before giving them new contracts, and he suspected they were doing it to him. So if the club's philosophy is always to look forward, to maximize asset value, was Salah's massive record-breaking contract simply a calculated business decision to guarantee a huge future payout from Saudi Arabia? Was he, in the club's cold financial eyes, not an indispensable legend but an enormous engineered financial asset whose eventual sale was always part of the plan? Something to consider until the next deep dive.